Welcome back to GH Updates, your go-to spot for all the drama, revelations, and explosive secrets from General Hospital. Buckle up, because the episode airing on Monday, June 2nd, 2025, is nothing short of a seismic shakeup in Port Charles. Let's break it all down. General Hospital will reveal Willow had endured a period of deep emotional pain and despair following the court's decision to strip her of custody of her children, thrilling from Judge Heron, granting full custody of Way and Amelia to Michael Hither, like a devastating blow. Standing in its courtroom, she felt as though her entire world had crumbled in an instant. Her heart, which had been devoted tenderly to caring for and loving her children, now seemed irrelevant. How could the court make such a decision? She had given everything she had to be a mother to her kids, and yet in the eyes of the law, she was deemed unfit to continue raising them. It was some injustice that tore at her very core. She couldn't comprehend that a judge could look at her life, her commitment to her children, and dismiss it all so easily. In that moment, it felt as though she was being stripped of the most sacred role she had ever known. Harold, as a mother. Her eyes welled up with tears as she stood frozen in the courtroom, unable to move, let alone speak. The reality of situation crashed down on her like a wave, and the sharp sting of betrayal from the court. And the man she once loved was unbearable. Michael, the person she had shared her life with, had now become the one Hayos awarded custody. The man who hadn't been her partner in life now stood across from her as a symbol of everything she had lost, her hands clenched into fists. But even that small act didn't provide any relief from the overwhelming sorrow she felt. All she could do was watch in agony as her life unraveled before her eyes. Michael, who once promised to share everything with her, was now her adversary, taking away the children they both adored. As the decision was finalized, Willow struggled to keep herself composed. Her heart was broken, her spirit shattered, but she couldn't allow herself to fall apart completely. Not in front of the court, not in front of Michael. Yet, no matter how much she tried to hold back her tears, the sense of betrayal and helplessness surged within her. Her thoughts became a whirlwind, and with each passing second, her anger and confusion only intensified. Something about the whole situation felt wrong. The decision didn't seem right, and her instinct told her that there was more to the story than what was being presented. She couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something had interfered with process. Perhaps a powerful influence had manipulated the ruling from behind the scenes. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that it simply didn't make sense for the court to make such a rash decision. Not with her history as a mother, not after everything she had done to be there for her children. Willow refused to believe it that the system she had trusted could be so easily corrupted. No, there had to be something more, something she had yet to uncover. Determined not to let this injustice stand, Willow knew she couldn't just give up. She had to fight, even if the odds seemed insurmountable. She couldn't accept this fate without knowing the full truth, without understanding what had led to such a devastating ruling. It was clear Thatch had to find a way to prove that court's decision was flawed, that nothing underhanded had taken place. The pain of losing her children was unbearable, but it wasn't as painful as thought of giving up, of letting Michael take away her rights as a mother without a fight. Willow was not one to back down, and she vowed that she would do whatever it took to reclaim her family. After days of agonizing over her options, Willow turned to Drew, the only person she felt she could trust in that moment. Drew had always been there for her, offering support when she needed it most. Now, he would be the one to help her uncover the truth behind the court's decision. Together, they started looking into the details of the case, searching for any discrepancies or hidden motive that could explain what had happened. Drew, with his connections and resources, was determined to help Willow get the justice she deserved. It didn't take long before they discovered something shocking. Evidence that Michael had used his influence to manipulate the judge. Drew found a series of connections, phone records, and testimonies that hinted at a much darker truth. Michael had blackmailed the judge, threatening her into making the decision. In his favor, this revelation hit Willow like a ton of bricks. She had never imagined Michael, the man she had once loved, could stoop to such levels. But evidence was clear, and now they had the ammunition they needed to fight back. The discovery of the black malapend up a new path for Willow. She and Drew quickly moved forward with their plan to appeal the decision. They worked tirelessly, gathering everything they could to prove that Thurling was not only unjust, but also. This wasn't just a butcher gaining custody of her children. It was about standing up against the corruption that had tainted the entire process. With Drew's support, Willow felt a renewed sense of hope. For the first time since the ruling, she believed that justice was still possible. They filed the appeal, and the courtroom battle began again. This time, they had the truth on their side. The second trial was a battle of nerves, strategy, and emotion. The stakes were higher than ever. Willow and Drew presented their case, carefully laying out the evidence of Michael's manipulation and the judge's compromised position. The truth was undeniable. Michael's actions were no longer just a personal betrayal. They were illegal and ethical violation as the case unfolded. The judge was forced to reconsider the initial ruling. With every piece of evidence presented, the power dynamics shifted. Michael, once so confident in his victory, now found himself facing the consequences of his actions. The truth had come to light, and it was no longer possible for him to hide behind lies and deceit. In the end, after a tense and emotional battle, Willow was victorious. The court overturned the original decision, and she was granted full custody of Way and Amelia once more. It was a hard-won victory, but it was a victory that proved the power of perseverance and the importance of standing up for what's right. Willow was finally able to hold her children in her arms again, and for the first time in a long while, she felt like herself again. Michael's actions had cost him everything. But in the process, Willow had gained back her family and with it, the strength to rebuild her life. The battle wasn't just about custody. It was about reclaiming her identity as Amathor, and nothing could take that from her again. Determined not to let this injustice stand, Willow and Drew wasted no time in filing an appeal. Their solve was clear. They would not let Michael's manipulation go unchallenged, and they would fight to restore her rightful place as a mother. They gathered every shred of evidence you could find, determined to uncover truth and expose the depths of Michael's deceit. Drew used all of his resources, calling in favors from trusted contacts and experts who could help them uncover the details that Michael had tried to bury. They painstakingly pieced together a series of connections and communications, painted a damning picture of Michael's efforts to manipulate the court. The most crucial of these revelations was that Michael had used his power and influence to coerce Judge Heron into making the erroneous ruling, using threats and blackmail to sway the decision. This was no longer just a simple legal dispute. It had become a battle for justice, for ethics, and for truth. Willow had never been one to back down from a fight, especially when it concerned her children. What was at stake was not just her rights as a mother, but the very integrity of the legal system itself. If Michael was allowed to get away with this, it would set a dangerous precedent. He had abused his power to control not only Willow's life, but also the lives of their children. Willow knew she couldn't let that happen. She had to fight not just for herself, but for all the mothers who might one day find themselves in the same position. The appeal trial was set and the tension in the courtroom was palpable. Everyone knew that this would be a battle like no other. Willow's lawyer Shad been working tirelessly to prepare Asalid's case, and they came to court armed with undeniable evidence. The atmosphere was heavy with anticipation as they presented their findings to the judge. The defense team, which had once been so confident in Michael's victory, now seemed rattled as the case against him grew stronger. Willow's legal team unveiled the proof of Michael's blackmail, emails, phone records, and witness testimonies that clearly showed how he had used his connections and influence to manipulate. Judge Heron into handing down a ruling that was not based in the law, but on fear and coercion. Each piece of evidence revealed a layer of corruption and deceit, exposing just how far Michael was willing to go to get what he wanted. The truth, long hidden behind layers of lies, was now in the open. As the details of his actions came to light, Michael's facade of control began to crack. He had spent so long thinking he could manipulate everyone around him. But now, for the first time, he was being forced to face the consequences of his actions. The courtroom was charged with a sense of shock and disbelief as Willow's team continued to expose the full extent of Michael's involvement. The man who had been so untouchable, who had seemed mid-invincible in his power, was now sitting in the defendant's chair, his future uncertain. As the evidence mounted, Michael found himself in a position he had never anticipated, vulnerable, exposed, and afraid. The arrogance that had once defined him was replaced by panic. He had always believed he could control the outcome of any situation. But now, with his manipulation of the legal system fully revealed, he was no longer in control. The ramifications of his actions were far-reaching. Not only had he endangered his own future, but he had also jeopardized the lives of his children. The unshakable confidence he had held in his ability to get what he wanted now seemed foolish, even tragic. For Willow, the mounting evidence was bittersweet. She had always known deep down that something wasn't right with the initial ruling. But seeing it all unfold in front of her was a crushing confirmed sin-off her worst fears. Yet at the same time, it brought her a sense of relief. This wasn't just a battle for her family. It was a fight for her integrity, for the values she had tried to instill in her children. As the trial went on, she felt a small but growing sense of hope. They were on the right side of history. They were fighting for what was just and fair, and that gave her the strength to keep going. In the end, after a long and grueling legal battle, the judge rendered a new ruling. The court ruled in favor of Willow, granting her full custody of Way and Amelia. The moment the decision was announced, Willow's heart swelled with a mix of triumph and relief. She had won. She had fought for what was right. She had reclaimed her children. The emotional weight of the victory was overwhelming. After everything she had been through, after all the heartbreak and betrayal, she had finally been vindicated. But this victory was not just a legal one, it was a moral one as well. Willow had not only reclaimed her right to be a mother to her children, but she had also exposed Michael for the manipulative and dishonest person he had become. Thurling was a direct result of the truth coming to light, and that truth had forced Michael to reckon with the consequences of his actions. He had tried to control the system. Butan, the end. It was the truth that prevailed. The battle for custody was over, but the emotional scars it left behind would take time to heal. Willow had fought a fierce battle, but in the end, she had won the most important thing in her life, her family. She was finally able to hold her children again. Knowing that they would never be taken from her, she had proven that no matter how powerful or manipulative someone might be, justice would always find a way to triumph in the end. As the trial continued, the weight of the evidence against Michael became undeniable. The once confident man who had manipulated the court system to his advantage was now standing on the precipice of losing everything. Willow withdrew by her side, had meticulously sliced together the truth. each piece of evidence revealing just how far Michael had gone to control the outcome of this trial. The emails, the phone records, the testimonies from key witnesses, all of it pointed to one clear conclusion. Michael had used his influence and power to force the judge into making a decision that had not been based on the law, but on fear and manipulation. The revelation of these actions sent shock waves through the courtroom. And even those who had once supported Michael were forced to confront the ugly truth. When Judge Heron finally saw aloft the evidence laid bare before her, she could no longer ignore the reality of the situation, the corruption, the coercion and theodicy that had tainted the original Decian were now exposed for everyone to see. Heron, though once an authority figure with the power to make life-changing decisions, had no choice but to acknowledge the error that had been made. The pressure she had felt from Michael had clouded her judgment, but truth could no longer be suppressed. She had no option but to revise her initial ruling. In a moment that felt like both a relief and a final recanting, Judge Heron delivered a new, fair, and just ruling. Willow was granted full custody of Y and Amelia once again. And in that moment, a profound sense of justice prevailed. For Willow, the courtroom was no longer a place of fear and loss. It had become a space where she only her children, but also her sense of self. She had fought Tyre's life for what was right, for what she believed was her duty as a mother. Ange had emerged victorious. The emotional toll of the battle was heavy, but the sense of triumph she felt was unparalleled. She could finally hold her children in her arms once more, feeling their warmth and their trust. The weight that had burdened her heart for so long, thinking she might never see her kids again, was lifted and she could breathe freely once more. But this victory was not just about the legal battle. It was about Mac, more than that. It was a triumph of spirit, of resilience, and of unwavering determination. Willow had faced the darkest forces in her life. The manipulation of someone Nesh had once loved, the injustice of a legal system that seemed stacked against her, and she had emerged stronger than ever. She had proven to herself and to the world that she would never succumb to injustice. Her love for her children was stronger than any obstacle, and she would do however it took to protect them. The personal cost of this victory, however, was not lost. On her, the relationship between Willow and Michael had been irreparably shattered. The man she had once shared everything with, the father of her children, had betrayed Heron the most unimaginable way. The trust they had built over the years had disintegrated, replaced by lies and manipulation, while she had won the legal battle. She had lost the future she had envisioned with Michael. Their bond, once so strong, was now gone, and in its place was the bitter taste of betrayal. But Willow knew deep down that she had made the right decision. She had done what was necessary to protect her children, and in that she found peace. The bond shared with Way and Amelia was irreplaceable, and no amount of personalis could take that away. She had fought for them, and she had won. That was all that mattered. As she looked down at her children, holding them close, she knew that the love they shared would be enough to overcome any obstacle that lay ahead. She had proven to them that no matter how hard life became, they could always count on her to stand up for them, to fight for them, and to be there for them no matter what. Willow's victory was a victory of the heart. She had stood telling the face of adversity, and she hadn't it for the most important people in her life, her children. As she walked out of the courtroom, her heart full of hope and relief. She knew the road ahead would be challenging, but she was no longer afraid. She had proven that no matter what life threw her way, she would always rise up and fight for what mattered most. As Willow walked out of the courtroom, her heart heavy with a mixture of relief and triumph. She knew this battle had changed her forever. She had fought not just for custody, but for her dignity, her integrity, and most importantly, for the future of her children. The path had been filled with heartache, betrayal, and uncertainty, but in the end, justice had prevailed. The emotional weight of the legal battle had been unbearable at times, but now, with her children back in her arms, Willow felt like a mother. Once again, a role she had fought so fiercely tore claim. Her relationship with Michael was beyond repair. But as she looked at Tway and Amelia, she knew that nothing else mattered. She had given everything to protect them, and she had succeeded. The personal sacrifices she had made along the way, facing the lies, the manipulation, and the overwhelming sense of loss had been worth it. Willow had not only won the right to be with her children, but she had also proven that no one, no matter how powerful, could take away her place in their lives. The future was still uncertain, and the scars of betrayal would take time to heal. But Willow was no longer afraid. She had emerged from the darkness stronger, more determined, and ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. With love of her children as her foundation, she knew she could overcome anything. The battle was over, but the journey of healing and rebuilding had only just begun. And as she held her children close, Willow finally felt the peace she had been longing for. What a whirlwind of emotion, betrayal, and bombshell revelations. Monday's episode promises to change the lives of Port Charles residents forever. Will Michael recover from Sasha's revelation? Will Nina's secrets destroy her credibility? And is this really the end for Curtis and Portia? One thing's for sure, General Hospital is just getting started. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to GH Updates for your daily dose of drama. We'll be right here, bringing you every twist, every turn, and every unforgettable moment. Until next time, stay tuned, Port Charles fans.